Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Undiluted Word podcast. And we have just started season 2, which is the Hall of Faith. And once again, I've got another guest who will be explaining and just describing his own experience in terms of faith. I'll let him do his own introduction, but I hope that you're all going to be blessed by what he has to share with you all. So, hello.
Hey, how we doing?
I'm good. Yourself?
Not too bad. I'm good.
Lovely. Would you like to give a quick, one-liner summary of who you are?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Tara. I'm 25. And I'm a nurse. And I've been brought on, I guess, to just talk about some experiences pertaining to faith.
Lovely. So anyway, looking forward to hear all about that. But before we go further, I've got an icebreaker question because I like them type of questions anyway. It was going to be one like, if you could have dinner with a Bible character, who do you have it with and why? But I'm going to switch up a little bit because I've got a follow-up question after it. So it'll be, if you could go to a concert with a Bible character, who would it be?
David, 100% David. Do you know what it is? Like, I feel like if we went to a concert with David, they might sing like one of his psalms, and I just like to see him react to someone like remixing one of his psalms. I think that'd be quite cool. And he's like mad musical, so I'd like to get his opinion on how he thinks gospel music is and stuff. That'd be definitely David, man, definitely David.
It's actually such an interesting scene at the moment. I feel like with gospel music overall. That leads up to my follow-up question. Well, who's your favorite? Like, who would you want to go and see in concert then? Like gospel.
Ooh, do you know what? I've got Travis Green on repeat a lot.
Yeah.
I got Travis Green on repeat a lot. I feel like, I think this is that basic, but Jonathan Reynolds, Travis Green. That being said, I probably want to go to, like Big Church Day Out. I hope they still do it this year. Yeah. So
I really want to go.
Like Gospel Wireless, you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
So I
such a
vibe. For real. So I feel like anyone that they bring there just be worth seeing.
Yeah, definitely.
But if I had to go see it, it'd probably be Travis Green or Jonathan Reynolds at the moment. Yeah. But Big Church Day Out as a secondary. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. The lineup is looking serious. It's looking serious this year. So 2022, man, you might see me there. You see me there.
With David?
Yeah, well, who knows? Who knows?
Okay, so we're just going to get straight into it. And so as we all know, Hebrews 11 talks through all these people who had big faith journeys and they had something in their life that really tested their faith. And the reason why I brought you on here today is because I believe that you are a 21st century person who is a hero of faith as well. And people can learn from your experience with regards to faith when you have an illness, for example, a health challenge. And so I'm hoping that people will be blessed by this. So in your own words, just like an open question, could you give a summary of your experience in terms of your faith?
Yeah, so I mean, faith it's one of these crazy things, isn't it? It's like a really big topic. But for me, I'd say faith is like a winding road, man. It's filled with twists and turns that you never really see coming. Like it's crazy. Like you never really see the things coming in life, and your faith is kind of like on this road, just twisting and turning. And for me personally, I had in my life, I've seen it hasn't just been the health aspect. There's been so many things where faith I've been required to have faith, particularly on the health aspect. So I am diabetic now, but I wasn't always diabetic. It was in second year of university. So I remember I was on placement. So like I said, I'm a nurse, and I was on placement. And I was actually supposed to be writing my exams as well. And I had an assignment due in a 3,000 word assignment. Shout out to all my uni students.
Love them.
Don't miss the uni life, but yeah, you know how it goes. And yeah, so there was like all of these things going on at once, and all these things that I had to get done. And then all of a sudden, I remember it was 3rd of January, I find myself in A&E, just like passing out quite frequently, not really knowing what's going on. And then all of a sudden, I just remember a nurse rushing in saying, you haven't had a blood test done. We're going to take your bloods now. And then she looked at me and asked me, am I diabetic? And I was just like, what? No, I'm not. And that just led to a whole can of worms where I spent, I think, 4 days in HDU. And then they put me on a ward, introduced me to insulin. And yeah, man, life changed forever. It was crazy. I think I spent like a week in hospital, which was really weird. But particularly in terms of faith, I remember sitting in A&E, and when you go in there, like it's really different. Like they put you in a bed by yourself, and you're staring up at the ceiling, and there's no decoration, so it literally looks like I haven't really been in the morgue, but I assume this is what a morgue would look like.
I hope not.
It just felt like it was just one bed, one monitor, and like there was no one coming in the room. And it just felt like, bro, you know, if there was a place to die, this was it. Like, and I remember lying on the bed and praying and really saying, you know, Lord, I walked in here alive, and by your grace, I'm gonna walk out alive. There's no other option, really. Like that was my faith in that moment. And then, yeah, I managed, you know, after a week, I walked out. Same way I walked in, I walked out. And God had been good. God had been really good.
Yeah. It's just amazing, I think, because like I think for you it all came sort of quite quickly from what you said. Like it was like, hospital, oh my gosh, okay. It is what it is now, like, oh, this diagnosis. Yeah. When you got diagnosed, how did you like feel?
Yeah, it was, I'll be honest, so it took a while. It took a while to really accept. And even now, like I'm still really bad. Like there's things that I don't wish to accept about my diabetes. I'm still really bad. I'd been living one way. So you just walk up to the fridge, take whatever I want out of the fridge, eat what I want, eat what I want, you know. But then all of that stuff gets kind of taken away from you. You've got to adjust and change everything you're doing to like make sure that, you know, this basically make room in your life for this illness. There's it's not getting rid of it. So when they first told me and they gave me insulin, I remember thinking about it like, oh, this is medication. This is a prescription that you just get from the doctor and you just got to take it for a while. But it hadn't really settled in like this was for life, or like this was, you know, this was serious now. So it took me a really long while. And I was angry for quite a long time. I think that was the big thing, was that I was angry. I'm not usually a crying person, but I remember there was one night I went back home for 2 weeks. And I was in the kitchen, and I just remember asking God why. There was, and the thing with diabetes is there is no why. They just tell you that this can happen at any time, and there's no why. It's not hereditary in my family, so no one had it before me. And they don't really have a cure for diabetes. They don't have a reason. It just, you know, it just happens. And so I remember asking God, you know, if anyone had the answers, it would be God. And I just remember asking him why. And for a long time, there was no answer as to why. And sometimes I think that's one of the hard things, especially when you talk about faith, is you expect God to tell you, you know, this is going to happen and this is why, and I've done this for this reason. But sometimes you don't get the answer that you want, and sometimes you might not even get an answer at all. And so for me, I remember feeling quite angry. I was definitely so angry at the fact that, you know, this had happened to me, you know. And it's that really Christian thing, you know, like I go to church and I pray, other people don't. And so, you know, I remember just feeling like, you know, God, if I'm doing all of these things, I've been a Christian for all my life. Why me? You know, there's these guys out here that aren't even praying. And so, yeah, I think the main feeling was anger, definitely anger.
Yeah, I think it's very, I like how you said, obviously, it is a human emotion. And I think when you do come across something like that, it's so easy for you to question God why, with regards to anything that happens to us in life, because we sort of have our plan in terms of what we want to do. And for you at that stage, that was like the last thing you expected to happen. And anger is, I think, a feeling that a lot of people can sort of associate with that. So how would you say you sort of like deal or go through that anger phase? How do you work through it?
You know, it's really difficult, and everyone will have their own way of getting through it. To be honest with you, My answer is going to be so generic, but I promise you this, this is what I did. It's a really, really generic answer, but
Yeah.
I think for me to get over that hurdle of anger, number one, I was grateful that I had other things to focus on. So I still had my studies.
Yeah.
And like I said, like I got diagnosed, I had 3 weeks off and I came straight back. I didn't want to take a break in my year. I
Mm-hmm.
was close to finishing second year, so I wanted to finish. And for me, I distracted myself. I guess this kind of goes into like a bigger testimony, but it may not have been the right call, but I distracted myself with other things. So I had exams, I had placement to finish, and I had an assignment that was due.
Yeah.
And then after that, there was another placement to go through before the end of the year. So
Yeah.
I quite a busy schedule. Didn't have time to really work through that anger. And so honestly, I probably should have. In the end, I did end up taking time off, but I probably should have taken time off to work through those emotions. I think a lot of the time we do this Christian thing where we say God's got everything in control and we just kind of sweep everything under the rug and just hide behind that God's got it in control.
Yeah.
But whilst God has it in control, we still have to confront the human emotions. These are situations that we go through. I think one story that I always feel really comforted by is Elijah. So he's running from Jezebel. And he's lying down in the wilderness and this man is depressed. He's just done all of these great things on Mount Carmel for God. And he's in the wilderness saying, I want to die. And God didn't send him to the wilderness, but God just let him work through it. He sent an angel with food and cake and drink. He ate and Elijah just kept on running and God just allowed him to work through whatever he was going through. And then when he gets to Mount Hebron, God meets him there. And I think that for me, that's what God had to do for me. I didn't really take the time to work through. And so God just said, all right, whenever you're ready, we'll work through it. And I think that's kind of an important thing for me anyway, is like, we don't usually take the time to work on the emotions that we feel and we just kind of push through and just say, well, God's got it control. So, but realistically, we should probably take time to work through those feelings around whatever happens.
Yeah, it's true. I think because even your favorite person, not Daniel, David, he literally throughout all his psalms, he just like says how he's feeling. He just keeps it 100% with God. And I think even whilst we're talking about faith, it's just that importance to literally just be so bare and open in front of him, being like, you annoyed me and this is why I'm annoyed with you. I'm angry because this, that, and the other. And I think he wants us to be open like that with him because we know that David was a man after his heart. And if he was annoyed with God and saying all this and that, but look how I'm feeling, of course, there was something good about doing that then. And I think that gives us sort of more an incentive to do that. Yeah. We'll come back on to talk about that later on in case I have some other things to like add with regards to that. But okay, after that experience in terms of this initial shock, you've got diagnosed now. How would you then say your faith has been transformed since then?
Yeah, so this is where it kind of began for me. So when I at the time when I got diagnosed, wasn't really so I'm born and raised Adventist, let me just say that now. But at uni I lost my way a little bit. Wasn't really doing anything crazy, but I just enjoyed the break from faith, from like religion. I just like going shopping on Saturday. I liked going and watching football with my friends. Like, it was just a break from my religion. And at the time I got diagnosed, I realized that I had to kind of like, I had to find God again because, that's what this was. It was a moment where God was putting something in front of me to change my course. Something that would completely stop me in my tracks and make me lean on him again. And so I kind of, like I said, pushed all that to the side for a minute, focused on finishing second year, finished second year uni. Third year came around and that's when I was introduced to Compass, introduced to the society at uni. This gang. Yeah. Shout out to everyone. I think that helped. That definitely helped transform my faith. I was around, I was asking God for answers, trying to get back in touch with my own faith and my relationship with him, and gave me people that were also chasing the same thing. I met Micah, who was a guy in Compass, who's actually turned out to be one of my best friends now, which is really amazing. And we grew together in faith. We prayed together every week. We make sure we studied. We talked to each other about things we were struggling with. And I think the whole experience like I think sometimes we look at whatever God puts in front of us as like a cause and effect, like I'm in trouble or this is a consequence or a punishment. But God also puts these situations in our way so that He can like get control back. You know, like cause me to stop in my tracks and really like stop what I was doing. So you know, I had to open my Bible. I had to pray now. I had to develop that relationship. Now that I'm back on course, you know, my faith is growing and I'm building this relationship again. And I think as well, there was also things I had to do. Like God knew there was, you know, things that I had to do. I became youth leader at Norwich, which is crazy. It was so crazy because I never in a million years would have thought that, you know, while I was at uni, I'd be youth leader at the church. And it was, but you know, God was just leading. And so there was things that were happening. I was just watching from like this one experience where I'm, you know, angry at God for all of these things, you know, saying, you know, what's the point, and really feeling depressed, to then watching everything kind of make a complete 180 and just look at my whole spiritual life like pick up. And so I think, I think that it was kind of the catalyst that helped transform faith. And I think we need to start looking at the things we go through as catalysts instead of, you know, like punishments and consequences. And instead of, Lord, why me? You know, what I began to ask, what are you trying to do? What is it that you're trying to do in this situation? You know, like, okay, cool, my pancreas doesn't work, but what's next? Like, so, you know, that's kind of how my faith transformed. And, you know, I got back into preaching. And like I said, I was youth leader. I was active on the committee at university. I just grew. Like, I just watched myself grow as a person. And, it was good. It was really good. It was really good.
Amazing. It's interesting that I picked up on what you said in terms of God used it, like the health challenge in itself, if you want to call it that, as a catalyst to then sort of push you in the direction He always wanted you to sort of walk in and be in. I think it's like a good way to look at these experiences that we go through in life, instead of asking why, because we may never actually get those answers to why. It's more of like, okay, what are you trying to do here now? I can see you've done this. What's the purpose for it? What do you now want me to do? And I think you were able to make the right connections and to start walking in that direction. Yeah,
definitely. And I will say as well, that was, for me, that was the why. You know, the fact that God had done all of these things and pushed me to a place of my faith that I'd never been before, that was enough. That was the why for me. That was enough. You know, okay, fair, albeit I had to give up my pancreas along the way, but, you know, it was enough for me to know that this is, you know, God cared enough to not let me go any further and said, no, I need you to come and do this, and I need you to do that. And that was enough for me. That was enough. Yeah.
Love that. So when going through this sort of journey between from sort of why and understanding, like, do you know what? God is who He is, and He's allowing me to go through this for a reason that I may not know now, but sometime in the future, it will become more obvious to me. Would you say that there were any sort of Bible texts or Bible experiences that you sort of identified with and held on to see you through?
Yeah, I'll be honest. So what happened to me was that we eventually like I said, I put dealing with my anger off for quite a while, and this diabetes thing was kind of in the back of my mind. It eventually got to a point where I couldn't ignore it anymore, and I fell into depression because of it. So eventually, like, this was in the middle of third year now, so almost a year later, because I hadn't dealt with it, it didn't go away, it just got worse, and it presented itself as depression. If I dealt with it earlier, that might not have been the case. But, you know, here we are anyway, middle of third year. I'm failing my placement, not doing too well on assignments. My relationship with mentors is not good. And, you know, they were looking to fail me. Like, it wasn't even close. Like, there was no way I was going to pass that placement that I was on. And so eventually they told me, you know, because of your diabetes, take your time out. We're going to give you a second chance. Just take your time out because you haven't taken time out yet. Don't come in for the rest of the year. Just have this time off. and try again next year. Didn't want to. There was all that pressure, and you know how it is with like African parents, and you need to finish and collect your degree. If you take time off, you're not going to want to go back.
Yeah.
But I knew that I had to kind of like deal with this now. There was no, and when I say like the depression was serious, like I'm someone who's fairly joyful a lot of the time, but even someone like me, I was having suicidal thoughts, and there was like times where I just remember thinking, yo, this isn't me, man, and this is crazy. Like this is really crazy. So they gave me my time off, and there was this period of time for 3 days where I just unplugged everything in my room, turned off my phone, unplugged my TV from the wall, and I just prayed, opened my Bible and started reading. And God just took me through the story of Joshua. And for me, the verse that stood out the most was Joshua 1:9. Be courageous.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Do not be dismayed, for I, the Lord your God, am with you.
Yeah.
That verse. And so it wasn't really just that one verse. It was like that whole 3 days where God was constantly just like pouring into me, just telling me, like, I'm with you. And telling me the story of Joshua, where Joshua takes over from Moses and he's afraid and he's scared. And, there's this massive change in his life that he doesn't know how he's going to navigate, but he knows that God's going to help him do it. And God just gives him the strength to then go and conquer like this whole land.
Yeah.
And so God was saying the same thing to me, like, if I can do it for Joshua, I can do it for you. Just have courage. Don't be afraid. I'm with you wherever you go. And I think over those 3 days, like with God constantly pouring that into me, it just gave me enough strength to face whatever was next.
Yeah.
I went back and we had to have like a sign-off meeting for this time off. And I walked in the room and I remember the lady going, "Oh my gosh, I haven't seen you smile like this in such a long time." Like, whoa, I wouldn't. And I was just laughing on the inside. Like, I don't know where this joy came from. I know where it came from now, but like at the time, I didn't know where this joy came from.
Yeah.
And so I know that God had been kind of pouring that into me, and then to see other people see it in me, I was like, okay, this is definitely God. So I think for me, those 3 days were probably, like, even now as I look back, those are like 3 best days of my life. Like, I can't even lie. Like, it was really cool, like just to be in the presence of God and just to have like just this constant flow of worship. And I think that's, for me, that's where the story starts. Really, that's where this change happened, and this whole story just kind of restarted there, which was amazing.
Yeah, lovely. And so, look at me, I'm just like firing question.
Is that you okay?
So from then, and so obviously where you are now, being able to share with other people, you've had this experience with God and now you've come obviously closer to him. How do you then maintain your faith, keep that strengthened? Because it's a muscle that we have to keep exercising.
Yeah. This is a really hard question. So, okay. So what I will say is, faith is a lifetime thing. No matter who you read in the Bible, they all, just take Abraham, for example. Like, this guy didn't perfect faith until he's sacrificing Isaac, and he's, pushing 100 and something years old. Like, this guy's old and he's had his whole life. And he finally perfects his faith at that age. This faith journey, it won't happen overnight. And what I will say is, even though I'm here as like a special guest, listen, I've had my times where I've lost my faith. I've been in situations where, even though God did all of those things, I can look back at it and say, God saved my life in this period of time. I'll give you an example. In June, my grandmother died. She died of, she had stage 4 cancer, and the family were praying. And I mean, like, we would, for the whole weekend, again, I'm diabetic. And I remember I said, Lord, I'm going to fast. And I didn't eat anything for 2 days straight. And normally, I should have been having hypos. I should have been on the floor. That's not supposed to happen. But God sustained me for 2 days. Like, I didn't eat for 2 days. I went to work. I was, fasting at work. I didn't eat at work. Like, and for 2 days straight, I was going. And the whole family, every 4 hours, we would pray together. And we really thought, we had enough faith to say, God is really going to do this, and this miracle is going to happen. And then a week later, she still died. And for me to pour all that I had, like, into that season of like praying and depending on God, like, to then not have what you asked for granted. And it's not like I was a reasonable request. I thought it was pretty reasonable. Lord, save my grandmother. That's reasonable. but that situation then it kind of breaks your faith a little bit. It's like, you
Yeah.
had faith that God would do this and it didn't
Yeah.
happen the way you wanted. And so,
Mhm.
man, and I felt that literally my faith just kind of I just pressed pause. And I remember just saying, Lord, I can't even pray at the moment. Like everything I had in me was just kind of, I think maybe it was grief. But what I'm saying is, these faith is a lifetime journey. Even though you have faith in one season, um, the next challenge will always come. And that
Yeah.
challenge, for some, they can overcome it. For others, it might break their faith and it might push them, over the edge. And for
Yeah.
me, I think my grandmother dying was what kind of pushed me over the edge. Now, I've learned, and I think for me, this has been the biggest lesson this year, um, is to not have faith in what God can do, but in who God is.
Yep.
For me, that's been my biggest lesson. It's not about God. I know you can do this. Like God can do. Like that's basic.
Yeah.
Someone who goes, "Let there be light," and there's light. That person can do. He can do stuff.
Yeah.
So I know God can do stuff. But for me, this is where I find my relationship with God after this. So even when God doesn't answer the prayer I'm praying, do I still have faith in Him for whatever comes next? Even when things don't add up the way I wanted to. I didn't get that promotion at work. Okay, I might not get into the university I want. All of these things happen, but I've still got to have faith that God's in control.
Yeah.
And for me, that was biggest lesson I learned this year. For me was just having faith in who God is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I think that's really powerful what you said, because real faith isn't necessarily about why, when, how, or like just those sort of questions that people like to ask, but it is in who God is. And I think like as human beings, we're so used to the things that we see, and we know faith is evidence of things that we cannot see. But humans, we just love to grasp things. We like to see it with our own eyes. And if we can't see it with our eyes, then it's just like, oh, like.
And I think that's also what's really hard about faith is giving over control, because you're not just saying, okay, God, you can do this, but you're saying, not even in my time, not even the way I want it done, but Lord, let your will be done. And that's hard.
That's hard.
For some people, their measure of faith is giving up control. I'm not someone that likes to give up control. I like to be like, know what's going on and make sure I've got things together. But sometimes you just have to give up control. Like even when I went to uni, this story makes me laugh now, but like I didn't want to come to the uni I went to. I remember picking choices.
I don't think anyone wanted to.
Well, I remember picking choices, and I had like the really the big unis and the unis that I wanted to go to now, and places that I wanted to be at. And there's only 3 unis that I really wanted to go to. And I was like, I'm paying £26 for UCAS, so I might as well put a 4th option in there. And I just remember clicking on, I'm not going to say the uni, don't want to give any bad press to the uni, but I remember clicking on it. And at the time, I just remember saying, Lord, whatever you do, don't send me to this uni. Do not send me here. I don't want to go here. I'm just clicking this as an option. And as God would do it, that's the uni that I ended up going to.
Thank God for the prayers He doesn't answer.
You know what I'm saying? So, and God knew, this is what I mean. Like if I never went there, half the things, my whole relationship with faith probably never would have happened. So, God's really in control. And I look at that moment nearly 8 years ago. I'm saying, don't send me here. And God's saying, no, you need to go there because there's some stuff that needs to happen.
Yes.
And that's how in control God is. And so when I give up my control for a moment, God's looking at 8 years in the future. This is where I need you to be. And so I always laugh at that story. And I thank God that He doesn't listen to me sometimes, because if He did, boy, I'd be...
Honestly.
Yeah. There's some things I'd miss out on, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Nah. It's so true, because I feel like in the heat of the moment, we pray so many prayers that we're just like, yeah, God. And then when it just happens, we're just like, oh, really? Like, what have we done that for? But then later on, down the line, that's when you see. And I think it's just being able to have that sightedness. I don't even know what kind of sight you call it, because it's not long-sighted, short-sighted. It's having that sort of faith-sightedness. That's like not what I think, but there's someone who's behind the scenes, and his sight is what's more important. And I need to align my way of thinking to his way of thinking. Yeah. this is something I was thinking of because just because I'm in this like health vibe as well. Because you see what you're doing, you see how you're a
Mm,
nurse.
yeah,
Of course, you see people day in, day out. In
of
terms
course.
of, I think people have generally have some type of faith, quote unquote,
Hmm.
well, when they get diagnosed with something, they have, you might not call it necessarily faith, but they have something, right? That sort of either keeps them going or doesn't keep them going, clearly, whilst they're
Hmm.
being like, how do you see their faith or whatever they're exhibiting whilst
Yeah.
working with people with illnesses, some that can be cured or not be? I know yours is like younger generation, but
Yeah, with children, yeah. It's
yeah.
do you know what it is? When you work with children, you see it in the parents quite a lot.
Yeah.
So it's I don't really so I, it's a difficult one to answer because obviously I don't really okay, let me say it like this. So on my ward, I've never hidden the fact that I'm Christian and
Mm.
I've never like tried to hide it. I used to release these Instagram videos just like with verses and I released these videos on Instagram just kind of like just meant as encouragement. And I guess people would watch them. And so everyone would kind of like realize, all right, so Tara's a Christian now and so forth
Yeah.
and so forth. Um, and actually, what ended up happening, which is really funny, was that like a lot of the Christians started coming out the woodworks now. Like a lot of people who I didn't know were Christian were
Mm.
like, and I've seen my faith impact the nurses on my ward, which was really
Mm.
shocking to me. So it wasn't even necessarily the kids and the parents; it was more the people I've worked with,
Mm-hmm.
people that I'd be drawing up medication in a drug room and I'd be singing a hymn. I remember one night 3 nurses came in and we all started singing the same hymn, and I
That's
was just
it.
thinking, this is crazy, like like Paul and Silas in the midnight hour, like this is power.
Hey.
Um, and I've just watched like people speak about faith, like non-Christians challenge, well, not challenge me, but like ask me questions and, like say, oh, when are you going to release your videos again? Or, and I've seen it kind of like impact my colleagues' faith and
Mm.
people that I didn't know were Christian. And even when I drop people off after work, so after a night shift, if someone needs to be dropped off home, I remember I was dropping this one nurse off and we were having a conversation about faith and church and how she was struggling. And it just like kind of opens that door.
Mm.
Um, in one patient in particular, though, I've seen her faith change. So there was a patient on the ward who was difficult to get along with. She didn't really get along with a lot of members of staff.
Yeah.
And I one day went to a room and I began to just like read this book to her as a joke. We were reading, it was like some really silly story. And then we read another book, again, another really dumb story. But then I saw in the corner of the room there was a Bible. And I just asked her, when's the last time you read your Bible? Are you actually reading and so forth? And so I said, all right, give me the Bible here. Let's read something. Um, and but remember, this started as a joke. So now we're actually like reading the Bible. And I did it once, I did it twice. And I've been doing it for like the last couple of months. I go in once a shift and sit down for half an hour to 45 minutes and I read with her.
Mm.
Um, and I began to notice she was making markings. She was
Mm.
writing notes. She began
Mm.
to tell me what her favorite verses were. Over time, she took out her headphones. She'd put everything away. She would listen. She'd ask me questions. We'd laugh about some of the stories that we read. Like, and I've watched like, and she says there's this desire for her to go back to church. Ironically, she loves reading the Psalms. So like, it's like I've seen her faith kind of grow, and I just keep asking God
Mm.
just more. If there's any
Mm.
more that I can pour in.
Mm.
I began to share gospel music with her. I said, "Have you ever listened to Travis Green or da da da
Of
da?"
course.
Gave her a list of songs, and she was playing the song. So like, I've seen this person's
Mm.
faith grow,
Mm.
and she's been an inpatient for a while, and it's just nice to
Mm.
see that faith, like just to make a difference in one person's life, to watch their
Yeah.
faith grow.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what's amazing. I think that's cooler than anything I've ever done. Like just making a difference in that aspect has been really
Yeah.
cool.
What would
And
you say? I feel like that's like bold. That's like now your faith being bold.
yeah,
What was, would you say there was a catalyst for you being so
I,
bold in your faith?
you know
Like,
what? Like honestly speaking, when I started working, I began just to ask God, like, for me, okay, so I preach from time to time. And when I first started preaching, I thought this was the way, this is how I need to share the gospel. This is what I got to do. But then I think after a while, you realize, like, hang on a minute, I'm just preaching to Adventists who know this stuff, or I'm just preaching to Christians who know this stuff. What about the people that actually need to hear it? How can I help them? And Paul says something interesting, be all things to all men. And so I thought, okay, look, I've got an Instagram platform, let me start there. And then that platform spiraled into people at work, and then that spiraled into them. They asked me to start writing inspirational quotes on the board. That spiraled then into speaking to this young, and God just kind of opens up these platforms. I just think it's not even, I mean, it is boldness, but it's also willingness. Like, you've got to be willing to talk about your faith, and to not even just talk about, to show your faith. Because, faith without works is dead. So if you're not willing to do anything with the faith you've got, what's the point in having it? And so for me, I just kind of began to ask God, like, okay, you've given me enough boldness to speak on a stage. Now just help me relate to the people that I go to work with. Help me relate to the people that I'm looking after. These are the people that I need to be talking to. So, yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. I'm loving it.
Am I supposed to ask you questions as well?
No, you don't have to ask me questions. You want to ask me questions? What question do you want to ask me?
How have you found your faith since you started working? How has it impacted your faith? Because you've moved, so yours isn't just like I've started a job. Like, you've moved to a whole new city. You might not really know anyone there, and you started a whole new job in a whole new environment. How has that tested your faith?
It's mad. It's so weird because, obviously, as you said, it's literally a work in progress. It's a whole lifetime thing. And I think what is kind of difficult sometimes is always knowing that it's going to be tested. And one thing I find myself saying a lot to Panache is like, bro, I know God is testing me, but I am tired.
100%.
I'm like, bro, it's enough. How much more? Like, I get it. You give your biggest battles to your strongest soldiers, but I am done. The muscles are there. I am finished. Just let me have a break. Because I just, like, from the beginning, what even is the beginning? I can't say this is the beginning, because there's always something. I think with regards to moving to Leicester and starting work here, I think it would have started maybe last year, when it's like, oh, we have to make our, like, where do you wanna like place you, like, rank up the places. One thing I always put in my mind in terms of faith is, literally can't remember the Bible text, so I always forget. But humans determine, like, in their mind, they determine which way they want to go, but it's God that determines the path. And I like in the Message version, it says humans throw the dice, but it's God that determines how it falls.
Amen.
So with me, my faith is literally like that. I'm gonna be like, okay, cool, this is what I want, God. Like, for me, when I do things in life, it's like, do you know what? This is the biggest, like, this is what I think is the best for me, yeah? I think the best for me, possibly being in London, going back home to where it's like cool for me, stay at home, save money, all of that, and be comfortable. God doesn't want us to be comfortable. So I already know, first of all, that's already a bit of a sticky one.
Yeah,
so obviously we made all these lists. And of course, because as humans, we want good things for ourselves as well, what we think is good for ourselves.
100%.
Anyway. I must have made this list, put London where I put it, and I was like, okay, cool. If not London, then okay, let's look at Kent. Okay, if not Kent, Essex, that's kind of still Londonish. Look at me, still trying to stay with what I'm familiar with.
Yeah,
and then like, okay, like if I gotta go further, then maybe let's say Midlands then. So I rank it up and I leave it and I'm like, cool. You go through all the examinations, whatever, and then you get to the stage where it starts getting like broken down into, okay, this is where you're gonna be. I remember they sent you the thing in the middle of the night like a thief, and it's like I think it was like 12:30, midnight, after midnight, Leicester, Eleanor. I was just like, oh Lord. I was like, Lord, I know I said you should just do whatever, but still.
I feel like that's it as well. Like what you said about comfortability, like faith and it just don't match up. You can't have comfortability and faith.
Right.
And I just, the thing that always stuck with me was that, you only ever go as far as your faith will take you.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you've only got faith to stay comfortable, then, God can't do the amazing things. Like so obviously everyone's a Prince of Egypt fan. If you're not, then you're
Hey.
getting to know. But like in Prince of Egypt, they get the story wrong. Moses doesn't ever talk to Pharaoh. Like when he goes
Mm.
to Egypt, he puts his hand in the jacket, does the whole leprosy thing, picks up the staff, and it becomes a snake. But then when God tells him, all right, now I need you to speak to Pharaoh and talk in front of him, Moses argues with him and goes, nah, I'm not trying to do that. And so God says, all right, cool. If you don't want to do it, then I'll let Aaron do it. And you just tell Aaron what to say, and Aaron will speak for you the whole time you're in Egypt. And that's what ends up happening. Moses didn't have enough faith. He had faith to do all of these signs, but then when it came to moving out of his comfort zone and going, all right, I'll speak in front of people, he just went, nah, I can't do that. And so God never, he never spoke to Pharaoh. Like Aaron had to do all of that when they were in Egypt. And so, if you don't have that faith, you're only ever going to go as far as your faith will take you. So for me, I look at all of these things that have happened, and it requires you to move out. I'm not a public speaker. I've said this so many times. I hate public. I hate it. Like I really dislike it. But if I'd like hid and I'd gone, no, I never would have seen God open up doors for me that He's opened up for me now. I never had this platform to share the gospel on my social media. I wouldn't be able to speak to strangers at work. Like all of these things that God does. There's reasoning behind it. And He's just trying to take you out of that comfort zone, and it will help you. You just have to like trust that this is what He's going to do, and I think that's the really cool thing about faith.
Because I feel like that being said, like being then put out of your comfort zone. Now I'm here in Leicester, living my life, and I can see God continually doing things the way He had intended it to be, making doors open and ones that be shut. And I think that is a big thing when it comes to faith, like the doors that God wants to be open, being opened and stuff. So it's very interesting. I love it. I can talk about it for like forever. I feel like it's the embodiment of all that we
really is.
do. It literally is like wowing. Love it.
Faith is crazy.
It really, really, really is.
It really is. When you like go on that journey, like you said, like when you actually look back in hindsight, and you I think there's an appreciation for the moments where you do have faith, and you trust. There's like a really small when I was in uni. This is like my kind of one of my early experience, and this is what I thank God for. Sometimes like He starts you off small, and then He asks you to trust Him in really small ways at first. I needed money. I remember, and I had to pay for something, and I did not have the money to pay for this thing. And so I was sitting there, and God said, "I'm going to show up on time. Don't worry. 4 days late, but I'm on time. It's cool. I'm coming. Just wait there." And I was like, all right, it's a day left to this deadline to pay. Lord, do something.
Where is it at?
You know what I'm saying? And nothing was happening. And it's like, okay, it's the day of pay. And I called them and I said, I haven't got everything together. Can you accept it like this? And they were like, nah, we need the whole thing now. I was like, all right, how long do I have? And they went 3 p.m. And so 12 o'clock comes. I'm looking at my bank account and there's no money. And I'm saying, Lord, you said you come in. What's going on? I kid you not. At 2:30, my auntie calls me and she says, somehow, some way, we've just run into some money. And God's told me you need it. So I'm going to send you this money. And I was just like, what? At 2:30, like, hurry up with it. Let's go. I need to pay this now. And so, God was like, it was like these small steps, and God tests those small steps. And like I said, man, if you give up early, you'll never see the big stuff. You'll never see the big stuff. Like if I'd given up then, would I have seen God take me through everything He took me through? It's really crazy. So just trust the small steps, man, and God will do the rest. You just have faith in the small things, and the big things will, your faith's like a muscle, like you said. It will grow, and the more you'll be able to take on, which I think is quite cool.
Definitely. Okay, so I feel like we've spoken a lot.
We have actually.
We've said so much about faith and how it can challenge, and we've also obviously at the start discussed in terms of faith with regards to health challenges and things. If you had 3 the undiluted word points to sort of say to someone who has maybe just been diagnosed with a condition, an illness, maybe a family member has been diagnosed with something, whether it be something that could be a chronic condition like yours is, or something that is acute, what are your sort of words of encouragement in terms of how, yes, it's going to test their faith, but how they can still grow from it?
Yeah, I think number one, your faith is not, let me word this right. Your faith isn't separate from your emotions. I don't know if that makes sense, but make sure you deal with the emotions around your faith. Like, it's not wrong for you to get angry. It's not wrong for you to be disappointed. God gave you these emotions and you'll feel the whole range of them, so don't think that, don't feel guilty for feeling any emotions surrounding any diagnosis or any health related problem. God understands. Jesus was here, and that man got angry at some things, and I'm pretty sure it hurt him when Lazarus was sick, and he knew he could go, but he had to wait for Lazarus to die, and I'm sure those things took a toll on Jesus as well. So make sure you deal with those emotions, but don't hide them as well. Don't think that because you have faith you shouldn't display emotion. You should. Secondly, don't trust in what God can do, trust in who he is, because that's what will sustain you. There's no if you put all your trust in the blessing instead of the one that blesses, then what does that amount to? If my trust is in my health, I can't save myself. There's the Bible says that I know this, it kind of doesn't add up, but Bible literally says who has the power to make one head on their hair turn gray. We don't have any power to do anything. So I can't trust in my Mercedes Benz outside. I can't trust in medicine. I've got to trust in God, essentially, is who I've got to trust in. And even if the outcome isn't what I want, or a family member struggling and the outcome there isn't what I've been praying for, my relationship with God is what will keep me. That's got to stay the same. And so for me, I can't trust in what I know God to be able to do. I've got to trust in who he is. And he's a comforter when I'm sad. He's a sustainer when I don't feel like going on. He's strong when I'm weak. So I trust in who he is and not in what he can do. And the last point, I think I'd say, faith is a lifelong thing. You're not gonna get it just by reading the story of David. I feel like sometimes we read these stories and we expect, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna have faith like David, and no matter what comes my way, I'm just gonna. But bro, like, these things took everyone their entire lives to get. Like, I was reading Jeremiah, and Jeremiah has this message from God when he's a boy, and then in the middle of his story, he gets chucked in a dungeon, and he's sitting in this dungeon cursing the day he was born, like really cursing his mum for giving birth. like this guy was mad. And he wasn't immune to all of these struggles and sufferings, and that's the prophet Jeremiah. So it's a big Bible character.
Big man.
And he was still feeling like, I've been let down, Lord, why am I going through this? And so it will take you a lifetime. Don't worry about not getting it right tomorrow. Just work on the small bits and just wait. It would take you a really long time to get there. So don't rush it. And don't be angry when you fall. Don't be angry if you don't have faith in something. Sometimes, like I said, it would take you a lifetime to get there. So bear that in mind when you next encounter something.
Thank you so much, Ty. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Really appreciate it. But I know this is not the last time you'll be on here. I know we'll bring you back to come and talk about something else or find something.
Anytime. It's been fun, It's been really fun. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to share with everyone. I really feel as though people can be blessed by it, because it's so easy to think about like things in the Bible and things like detach yourself from it because it seems so like far from you. But when you hear about, okay, these are real life people going through real life issues, it's not no fairy tale no more. This is reality. So
For sure.
You have just finished listening to an episode of the Undiluted Word podcast, The Hall of Faith. In this episode, by faith, Tyrell gave up control and allowed God to lead him from depression to being a vessel for Christ. We hope you have been blessed by the experience of our special guest and hero of faith. If you have further questions or comments about this particular topic that you would like to pose, either to the guest or myself, don't hesitate to send a direct message on Instagram or an email to theundilutedword@yahoo.co.uk. Details can be found in the show notes. Here's your reminder to follow our Instagram page @theundilutedword_ and sign up to receive alerts about new blog posts on our website, www.theundilutedword.com. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite listening platform so you don't miss an episode. One last thing, it will be selfish not to share with a friend or two, so share. Till you hear from me in the next episode, stay blessed. Bye bye.